The beautiful thing about wilderness is that it reminds you that there's so much more out there than yourself, and you can sort of get outside of yourself and listen and be still.
We need those places where we're reminded that we're part of something bigger than ourselves. And wilderness does that. And we need it. It matters. And what wilderness managers do matters. We promised, as public servants, to take care of America's National Wilderness Preservation System. How do we honor that promise?
The seeds of a wilderness ethic began in this country back in the 1920s with folks like Arthur Carhart and Aldo Leopold. Carhart was sent up to Trapper Lake, up in the flat tops in Colorado, to survey the area around the lake so that it could be developed for recreation for the Forest Service. And when he got there, he saw something that maybe others didn't. He saw the value of the wild experience and felt like developing it would diminish the area's value to the American people, not to enhance it. And people like Leopold wondered what it would be like if we lost the ability to go into unknown places and to explore wild country. These are folks that saw the value of something that was slipping away long before others did. And they both had the courage to speak up and to begin those first efforts to protect the wild places of our country.
You've chosen wisely to be here in this course. The Wilderness Act demands of us some of the best thinking and some of the most difficult kinds of dedication to its spirit.
The Arthur Carhart National Wilderness Training Center was established in 1993. Our purpose is to train other federal employees and our leadership on all of the merits of the Wilderness Act, all of the requirements that they are responsible for implementing the Act, along with educating the public and other citizens and visitors of wilderness.
Secure for the American people of present and future generations the benefits of an enduring resource of wilderness. The National Wilderness Preservation System was created because of this. This is the purpose. So how do we protect those wilderness benefits? Yeah.
The whole purpose of the Carhart Center is to empower agency employees and the public to take care of their National Wilderness Preservation System.
We put on training through traditional classroom style sessions. We also give them exercises on how to navigate through a decision-making process.
What would you need to know to make that kind of a decision? Who's got an idea? Yes.
In wilderness, we're trying to maintain this elusive concept of wilderness character. That's why we send our managers here to Carhart to learn the law so that they can protect the character of these wild places, but also make smart decisions that are in the best interest of the people we serve.
It goes back to people's expectation of what wilderness is. That's critical. So being from Fish and Wildlife Service, Park Service, Bureau of Land Management, and Forest Service, we discussed a number of tough decisions we have to make that seem counter to the Wilderness Act.
Well, the training part here at Arthur Carhart is essential to our land management employees to be able to better understand why wilderness is important, what constitutes appropriate management of wilderness. Having a course that gives them the ability to discuss with their peers the things that they're going to face, and then gives them an experience of actually going out into the wilderness and experiencing what it is to be in the wilderness is important.
So you'll be going into the Bob Marshall Wilderness Complex. We all call it the Bob.
We're going to be traveling this trail at the speed of horse, 3 miles an hour, and I encourage you to look around and see things.
You really need to be hands-on to really learn and have that experience, and Arthur Carhart provides that experience. To be in the field, understanding what the wilderness ethic means and how important it is for ourselves to have that feeling, but hopefully we can help others experience it in the future.
As managers, sometimes I think we get in the trap of we've got to sit behind that desk and answer the phone calls, and I think there's some real value as a manager to get out into the places you manage. I think what I learned most is just we have a great responsibility to protect these special areas, to manage them for current and future generations, and to protect those values, those wilderness character values.
By doing this training actually in the wilderness, we could point out at many turns the different issues that we are facing. So we got to see that firsthand and discuss those as a group.
The training here has been really helpful. That really helped me understand what we're trying to accomplish, why it's important to be, thoughtful about how we're doing things. Whenever we go in to do anything, we should be thinking, what is the purpose of that activity? Are we going to benefit the wilderness character long term, or is it a convenience factor? It's going to make my job a lot easier when I go back to the refuge to figure out how we're going to manage it moving forward.
One of the things that we want to do as wilderness managers is to make a difference. It's our job to uphold the principles and characteristics of wilderness. And if we don't do it, then who will?
I feel very, very lucky to have had this opportunity. This is an amazing privilege that we get to do something like this. It means a lot to me, and I'm very grateful that I work for an organization that thinks it's important for us to spend time to truly understand how we can manage wilderness the best way possible.
Under the Wilderness Act, the primary legal mandate is to preserve wilderness character. That requires active stewardship. That doesn't necessarily mean we're out there actively manipulating the resources, but it still requires stewardship in order to ensure that they're meeting the legal mandate. All 4 of the National Wilderness Preservation System's agencies all rely on best available science, and that's really where the work that we do at the Leopold Institute comes into play.
Science is one of the public purposes listed specifically in the Wilderness Act. Science is critically important in our stewardship of these wild places. We have to know how these healthy landscapes function if we're going to both protect them and be good stewards of them.
In 1967, the Forest Service established the world's first wilderness or wildlands-focused research unit. And that really was the precursor for what ultimately became the Aldo Leopold Wilderness Research Institute.
The models are actually way better than I expected them to be.
The Leopold Institute has one primary mission, and that is to provide science in support of wilderness stewardship.
There's a great Aldo Leopold quote that said, "Each biotic province should have a wilderness for comparative studies." It's the place where evolution can happen. It's the place where natural selection and evolutionary processes happen. It's the place where water is free to flow and animals are free to roam.
Wilderness is a place where we get to watch natural processes play out. We can study how nature works, we can study ecology, we can study ecological processes in the absence of other confounding factors like logging and roads. So that has created this wonderful natural laboratory for watching ecological processes play out. I think that's a really valuable role that wilderness plays, is letting us know how much we're really interfering with the rest of our lands because we have something to compare that to.
Without wilderness data, we would always be using data that would have some form of human impact within it. That is why science is so important to wilderness management, is that it provides the context that will be used to eventually make a decision. Without the science, a manager would have no reference in which to make a decision.
We work extensively with our management colleagues to identify priorities, areas of shared mutual interest, where we can leverage off of resources and expertise within the agency and within our own institute to develop the science that they need to inform their management decisions.
I was very fortunate to be able to use the scientists from the Aldo Leopold Institute to help us to determine what would be appropriate levels of recreation use and how could we best manage that in a way that wouldn't detract from the natural condition and still allow recreation use to occur. It's really fortunate to have both the physical scientists and the social scientists at Aldo Leopold because wilderness incorporates both.
We look at all sorts of questions related to visitor use. Who is using wilderness? How they're using wilderness? What do they value in wilderness? What are the social and economic values and benefits of wilderness? What are the intangible qualities? What are the spiritual benefits that people derive from these wild lands, these wild waters? On the natural sciences side, we have a very long and very deep history in fire ecology. Understanding the role that fire and other natural disturbances play across the landscape, how these factors influence future fire behavior and effects to nearby communities. As we look towards the future, we expect under climate change that there will be a lot of need to better understand how, as vegetation shifts, as fish and wildlife population shifts, what that will mean for management decisions and how to manage to preserve wilderness character.
It's been interesting professionally to see the need for scientists to be much more outspoken to the decision makers about what's going on. It's not something that we're well trained in, so it does end up having to just come from your heart that you want to do something to protect the resources that matter to yourself, but also to the broader community.
We're always going to have uncertainty. There's always going to be pressures. There's always going to be new questions that we're faced with, and science helps us navigate the complexity of our world.
A great aspiration of mine is for the American citizen in the future to have a respect for a wilderness, defining what it is it means to be an American citizen. If we do that well, if you do that well, you will contribute toward that particular outcome. And I would suspect that though they may never remember who it is that we are, is that they will be grateful for the kinds of choices and decisions that you've made.
I think that concept of wilderness was an important part of who we are as Americans. And if we don't have that, then we've lost an important part of who we are as Americans.
You know, these spaces are special, and I think that's the whole point of what Congress did in the Wilderness Act, was put something in place to preserve it for those that are going to come after us. And we need to do all we can do to make sure that we do our jobs to do that.